While ZOWIE mousepads haven't been the most popular recently, only just a few years ago the ZOWIE GSR-II in deep blue was the most popular mousepad ever, and absolutely everybody was talking about it. It really did set a new standard for mousepads back then, especially more commonly available ones, since Artisan definitely still was quite niche back then, and I do think that there was a reason that it was the most sought after mousepad, and it was so difficult to get your hands on that you had to buy it for a lot of money over on eBay. However, there was one really big issue with the old deep blue version, and that was the worst thing known to humankind: a coating on a mousepad. With all of these new ZOWIE pads, the coating is now completely gone. And with the newer versions, there seem to be way less issues with humidity, especially compared with their old ones. And in this video, I'm gonna show you why you should definitely look into the new ZOWIE mouse pads if you're looking after a new pad without having to spend an arm and a leg on one. Since this is another mousepad video, I want to make it as short as possible and get the information out there without wasting any time. But before I do that, I wanted to notice that only 12% of you guys actually subscribed. So if you're still not subscribed and actually enjoying the content so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it. Getting to the boring stuff, these pads both measure 460 by 390 by 3.5 millimeters. That means compared to something like an Artisan pad, you definitely are missing out on some extra width, and you're also missing that extra height as well. Also, since these are rubber-based pads, they actually come rolled up in a box. This also means that shipping is cheaper than most other pads out there. I personally don't have an issue with my pads not lying flat. I did actually get a damaged unit at first because that one was just completely obliterated by the UPS guy. But luckily I got a replacement sent out, and as you can see, these pads lie perfectly flat even though I just had them rolled up in my box for storage. Both of these pads spot the same exact base, same dimensions, same packaging, same everything, with the main difference being the GSR-II not being stitched and the GSR-II having this level to surface stitching that feels very premium. Now, when it comes to the base of the mousepad itself, it is a very firm experience. If 1 were the hardest and 10 were the softest, I would put this at around a 2. It is not a complete hard pad, and there is some of the base that you can dig a bit into, but it is a very consistent experience, as you will see in a bit, on both Tiger Arc 1, X-Ray Pad Jades, Lamsu stock skates, and also the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition skates. On all of these skates, the pad feels incredibly consistent because I can press into it without it affecting my gliding experience too much at all. Of course, there's always a slight difference in speed because you do have a bit of base to dig into, but overall it is a very consistent experience. On the GSR-II, we are of course speaking of the same base again. Now, getting deeper into stitching, well, we can't get deeper into a pad that doesn't have any, but as you can see, the stitching on the GSR-II is exactly level to surface, and I have not had any comfort issues with this pad whatsoever. Getting into the sleevability of the pad, which I don't think ever gets covered much, I do want to mention how these different sleeves performed for me on this pad, and I think that one way to show how it actually performs in game is the sound of it that it makes, so you can compare this footage and the sound of your combo to what I have here. Both pads perform really well with especially the focus sleeve, so if you're a sleeve enjoyer and you really love control pads, but you hate the fact that you basically can't use sleeves with an Artisan Zero because it just scratches like crazy, I do think that these are some great combos. In terms of design, the GSR-II is a black square, and when it comes to the GSR-II in grey, I do think that it looks really awesome. In terms of overall surface feel, the GSR-II feels incredibly smooth to the touch. It is definitely more of a control pad for sure. And when going over the surface of the GSR-II, it also feels like a very smooth control pad. And it's overall a very control-focused surface that feels really nice to play on. For comparisons, I have a few very popular pads with me, and also the new new Wooting Andromeda Pro, which I'll also have a full review on very soon. These are all control focused pads. Many of them are incredibly similar. One of the absolutely most popular pads that the GSR compares to is the Saturn Pro from Lethal Gaming Gear. The bass experience on these two pads is very different, with the GSR-II being much more of a firmer pad compared to the new Saturn Pro in soft, which still feels almost like an extra soft in-game. Of course, we're comparing a pour-on bass pad to a custom rubber bass or foam bass pad on the ZOWIE, but in terms of overall speed and surface feel, the Saturn Pro definitely feels noticeably faster, with the GSR-II being a very control-focused experience. I do think that the initial friction is rather low and you can get the mouse moving quite easily, but as soon as you get into that tracking scenario, you can definitely feel a slight tug because it is very control-focused. But then again, it is nowhere near being a mud pad, and neither is the GSR-SE. These are just your average control pads with a bit more added control as something compared to the Saturn here. Especially on more conventional skates, you can feel the focus on control, whilst the Saturn doesn't have that tug to it, if you know what I mean. But to be completely honest with you, I am exaggerating a bit because these are very similar mouse pads, and I do think that for the average enthusiast, especially for the average gamer, that the difference in speed between these three pads does not make a difference. So I would actually recommend getting something a bit more affordable and also more readily available for you. Comparing the GSR-II to the new Wooting Gaming Andromeda Pro, these pads feel incredibly similar. Whilst they're both nowhere near being a mud pad, I do think that they are right in the middle of being a control pad, but with the Andromeda Pro being more similar to the Saturn. But then again, if I were to actually recommend any of these pads to you guys, I would simply go for the one that is more affordable for you or more readily available or easy to get. But that's just talking about the surfaces and the overall speed. The bases on these two things are completely different, with the Andromeda Pro being a pour-on pad that is on the soft spectrum, compared to the base on the GSR-II and the GSR-SE that I've already described a few times in this video already. And comparing the Artisan Zero to the GSR-II, the Artisan Zero has way more of a texture to it, with the GSR-II being much more of a complete smooth pad. I do think, however, that on the Artisan Zero you don't have that tug that the GSR-II has. Now, when it comes to comparisons with the GSR-SE, it is incredibly difficult to compare it to anything out on the market except for the Waxi PA, which is basically the same pad as I remember it personally. The construction of the base, the surface, and everything around it is incredibly similar because the team that actually designs and works on the mouse pads at Waxi have been working for ZOWIE before. They went out and created their own brand, so it makes a lot of sense that the pads came out very similar to each other. So if you want something a bit more balanced, I'd go for the GSR-SE, but if you want something a bit more controlled or simply want that nice stitching, I'd go for the GSR-II instead. Talking about humidity, it's just something I cannot relate to personally. I have never had any humidity issues with mouse pads at all where I live in here in Switzerland. So if you want to know more about that and how these pads are affected by humidity, I would suggest asking people on a Discord server, PERIPHERALS, since we have many enthusiasts in there which definitely have some experience with humidity and these pads as well. And since I did want to get some info for you guys, I asked my good reviewer friend Stubby if he had any experience with humidity issues with these pads, since he does live in a very humid area, and he told me that he didn't have any humidity issues with any of these two pads. Now, when it comes to my personal opinion about these two pads, I do think that these are actually some of the more unique pads out there currently. This year has been full of control pads and everybody else just trying to copy them. It has just become standard to make a pour-on base or a custom PU base which is incredibly similar. Everybody is up with the quality now, and that's why I simply don't care that much about mousepad videos anymore. And that is why I actually did want to make this video only about these two ZOWIE pads, because I do think that they are unique in their own sense. You can get them for 40 euros in Europe or whatever stores provide these other than that. And if you simply don't know what pad you actually want and you don't want to spend more than 40 euros, I do think that you can't go wrong with these if you don't mind the sizing of them. I can definitely see the sizing being an issue for many enthusiasts out there, especially because square pads that are 500 500 by 500 are becoming the new standard now. But for somebody like me, I don't really care about that. I definitely do not care about the missing verticality of the pad, but I have noticed that when I switch from my artisan pads over to this, I did see myself going over the edge quite a few times. But other than that, I don't see it being an issue being rolled up or anything like that. I really like the consistency of the pads because of the firm base, and I especially think that rubber bases should become more of a standard again, because this custom PU and poron hype is a bit too much. We need more firm pads that don't slip on your desk, and that's exactly what this is. Especially like firm mid pads that are actually based on poron, like the mid-range from Artisan, can definitely slip around on your desk a lot. So switching to something like this or a normal rubber base instead is definitely the way to go in my opinion. Now to the conclusion, who is this pad for? If you simply do not know what you want to get and you simply want a pad that is readily available for 40 euros and you want it to be controlled, just get one of these pads. Compared to the rest of the market, these are unique and not just simple clones of other pads out there. But since the sizing is a bit awkward compared to the other enthusiast options out there, I would definitely say that you should not get this pad if you want either a square pad, if you need the 500mm in width, or you need that extra verticality. I also would not get any of these pads if you need something you can dig into and get some extra control out of. But the fact that these pads come rolled up in a box is a non-issue in my book, because as you can see, even though I just had them rolled up in my box, these just glide completely flat. If you do have any issues with them not lying flat, what you can do is just a careful reverse roll, either directly on your desk like this, or you could completely reverse roll it, put it in the box for a few minutes, and then put it out on your desk again, and it should be perfectly fine. Just make sure to not roll it up too tight because you could crease it, but as long as you do it loosely, it should not be an issue. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to like and subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll see you guys soon again. Peace out.
Watch me take 27 inches like a pro.
I'm watching.